Hey everybody, Mike Miller with the Herald Times. Once again, Andy Wittry with the IDS coming back once again. Andy, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm honored. Back-to-back days. This is huge.
Back-to-back days. Yeah, unfortunately we got the, fortunately we got the early game today, at least from ourselves. It's a beautiful day out here.
Oh, it's awesome.
On the island of Maui. It's really nice. It rains like every day here. It was raining when we got to the arena this morning, but it has turned out to be a pretty nice. I don't know what I'm showing you. There's really nothing to see here. There's some trees and some tape. I will say some water, some mountains.
There's stuff.
There's a lot of stuff, although you can't see a darn thing. I don't know why I tried to show you. Didn't really get into it yesterday, but yeah, this is a unbelievably beautiful setting for a basketball tournament.
Oh, it's perfect.
Still waiting for that beauty to kind of show up on the floor, though, especially in Indiana's case. After that loss yesterday to Wake Forest, interesting night for the Hoosiers. So they get done with that. Tom Crean schedules some gym time so that they could presumably go out and practice, work on some stuff. He wasn't happy. That's to say the least, with their effort, performance, just about everything in that game against Wake Forest. So Indiana was set to pay the price. First, though, they went to a film session, a long marathon film session that kind of played out at their hotel back at the Hyatt. And from there, they looked at all the many things, and this is why it took so long, because there was a lot to look at. And they looked at all those things that they actually, from what I understand, didn't make it to their gym time. They didn't actually practice. Instead, they turned the ballroom at the Hyatt into a, very impromptu, crude basketball court, where they essentially just had like a walkthrough, looked at film, went in between looking at different pieces of film from the Wake Forest game. They would then go on the, court in the ballroom and just walk through the plays. So they did that long into Monday night to prepare for this game against St. John's. I say all that not to maybe say that they were tired or exhausted or fatigued in this game against St. John's, a game they won 83-73. But I say it as just further proof that instead of, preparing to face some of Maui's best, the top tier of talent here, Indiana was back to fixing itself. They weren't preparing for Kansas. They weren't preparing for Vanderbilt, which is the team they probably should be matching up with today. They were fixing themselves. And debatable whether those corrections were accurately and effectively made, as Indiana never put away a St. John's team that came here with, frankly, clearly the worst resume of the 8-team bunch. I wouldn't include Chaminade in that, but of the, 7.
You could if you want, honestly.
Sure, whatever. Yes, the worst resume of these teams. Never buried them, never really pulled away. They had a 17-point lead, I think, with 3 minutes left in the first half, and then the first half score was 42-31. Mm-hmm. Indiana was still in control, but St. John's comes out. Pretty spirited run to start the second half, and Indiana let St. John's hang around the next 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, no, they went on a 10-0 run, started late in the first half, continued that over to the second half after halftime. I know I tweeted it. Going into halftime, those guys were pumped, screaming some stuff. Can't share this on the video or Twitter or whatever, but they're excited, came pretty amped up, scored 10 of the first 13 points in the second half, got it down to 4 at one point. Their Italian point guard, Musini, he actually had a pretty nice game, hit a few big threes, and the victory was never in jeopardy, but it was interesting, at least I'll say that the game was kind of in the balance for a little bit, but they kind of traded baskets and then won by 10, but it was never a dominant performance. They didn't put their foot on the pedal, didn't step on St. John's throat. They haven't proven to have that killer instinct just yet.
No, they certainly haven't, and that honestly, and this is kind of what's so troubling, is they never really had that early last season either. I mean, It was almost a year ago when they had that loss to Eastern Washington. They had other opponents. I think one was like UNC Greensboro or someone like that who came in, and opponents like that who came into Assembly Hall, they were never really fully put away at any point in those games. Those were examples of Indiana just not losing games rather than winning them. And I think today was more of that. They didn't. Yes, they won, but they more so just didn't lose it. I guess the good news is Thomas Bryant was back to looking like the pre-Maui version of himself. 15 points in the first half, finished with 19, scored each of the 6 first points. They got him involved early. Not so much a factor late, and that's another thing, but getting him back on track is important. I will say, though, I guess we should probably touch on this before we get too deep into this, was the lineup changes. This was another Indiana lineup today. Troy Williams and James Blackman Jr. were benched. Variety of reasons, and this goes back to the spring. I mean, ever since, April, May, around that time when we were speaking with Tom Crean about looking ahead to the season, number one thing he said was defense and decision-making are going to be the absolute number one and number 1A, number 1B, things really that are going to decide and dictate playing time moving forward this season. And really given his first opportunity to follow through on that, he made it pretty clear that it was not up to standard the way James Blackman and Troy Williams played yesterday.
Yeah, no, James sat for the first 6 minutes, Troy sat for the first 8. Through multiple media timeouts, those guys weren't coming out. And then finally, I think they played better, but still not awesome. Part of that may have been a lack of minutes.
Yeah.
But still, you're right. He finally put his money where his mouth is and said, you know what, playing time is it's not a right. It has to be earned. And so finally, kind of forced, 60% of the lineup from yesterday to today changed. We also saw Colin Hartman get the start over Bielfeldt, which we've seen that kind of alternate. But Blackman and Troy, the two big ones there, and we'll see if if he stays true to that going forward. That defense, which has been a problem for the past 2 seasons, really, if that isn't there, then you're not going to play. You're going to sit right next to me on the bench.
I don't know that James Blackman's never going to be a great defender. I'm not even sure he'll ever be a good one. But I think there's the capacity to be better than he is. And I think, I felt like we were starting to see just a little more want-to from the guy. The first few exhibitions, first few games, definitely. I guess. That didn't translate to Maui. Troy Williams' case, I saw someone saying that the Wake Forest game was, it was usual Troy Williams. He led the team with 16 points, but he had 5 turnovers. And at this point, usual Troy Williams is just not going to cut it. This guy has all the athleticism in the world, but that's not translating into a very good basketball player at this level. This guy can dominate lower levels, but really becoming a consistent and effective player at the elite Division I level continues to elude him. It's going to be ongoing with Troy Williams, and I think he's aware of this. I know he is. He says as much, that he knows that just playing solidly is all he really needs to do. All the dunks, all the running, and the effort is all great, but it doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't play within the scope of your team and play within your own body, really. It's an ongoing thing for Troy Williams, and I think he is aware of the progress that needs to be made, but actually making that next step as a guy who plays 100 miles an hour is going to be, it's tough to really get that switch turned. So he sat today, and boy, we could do a whole scoop talk on Troy Williams and some of that stuff today. So you wonder what lessons are learned from this. Still not sure, just because of the way this team kind of played today. We're shooting this, I guess, at halftime of the UNLV Maui or Chaminade game. Didn't think we'd be sitting here Tuesday monitoring UNLV Chaminade for Indiana's potential opponent, but that's exactly where we are. Looking ahead, this is just, I'm trying to think of the right word. Disappointing, yes, but I think it's something more than disappointing. The way these first few days have unfolded for Indiana here in Maui. The strength of schedule has suffered a tremendous hit. Indiana's very likely possibly going to leave the island here in a couple days without having played a single NCAA tournament caliber team. This is not at all the kind of trip Indiana hoped to make. The good news is it is November. It's the third week of November. Maui does not necessarily dictate success and failures 3 months from now, but you would think, though, that for an Indiana program that kind of viewed this Maui trip as its first opportunity to really establish itself as a national title contender, you were expecting a more advanced approach, and we haven't seen that so far. So, I don't know, Andy. What are you thinking?
No, this was their chance to have you mentioned it, kind of the national coming out party. They wanted to play in that championship game against Kansas.
ESPN wanted to
play that is how
yeah.
Tournament organizers and broadcasting executives, they planned that up so that Indiana was on one side, Kansas was on the opposite side. Ideally, they go 2-0 and then face each other, and Indiana couldn't hold up. It's half the bargain there. And so it's almost a shame, if you will, that really, 20 minutes of basketball kind of cost them the rest of the trip.
Yeah.
Is that by Monday, the trip isn't over in terms of games we played, because they still have 2 left, but over in terms of really what you could kind of climax and achieve. As you mentioned this, right now, we're hearing cheers. I don't know what the score is, but if Chaminade somehow wins, then they're playing a Division II team tomorrow, and that's doesn't even count for the RPI. I don't think Division II teams count for that strength of schedule and all those stats, which means that they would then be going to Duke pretty soon without having faced truly an NCAA tournament team this season. So we have no idea how they can handle that top flight of competition.
Yeah, you don't want to overreact at this point in the year. You don't even want to go so far as to call this all a wasted trip for Indiana. But man, this is just, you're not really.
You haven't learned much, really.
Still don't get a whole. You don't get a whole lot out of this. You don't get a whole lot out of this St. John's win. It was a win that felt more like a game that Indiana didn't lose. You saw the reappearance of Yogi Ferrell scoring 22 points, 7 assists. Really good game from him. But more than anything else, I mean, maybe we'll learn some more at Duke in next week. But till then, guys, we're running a little long. We'll be back here tomorrow to watch Indiana face either UNLV or Chaminade. So let's go to the beach. See you guys.